All right, we'll call this meeting of the Port Hood River Commission to order. Are there any modifications to the agenda from staff, Kevin?
No, there are no staff adjustments to the agenda.
Okay, there's a couple from the commission. We're going to discuss item C. There's gonna be a quick discussion on that, but it can stay in consent, excuse me, not C, D, the rates. So we'll discuss C and D a little bit, both of them. Item F is going to be put down as action item B. That's all I've got. Anything else that I missed there? Okay.
Oh, may I interject one thing, Kevin? I think I checked in with you, the executive sessions reference to ORS 1923359A and 2F, that is not going to occur this evening, correct?
9A and 2F.
Right, it was just going to be 6602E.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so with that deletion to the executive session.
Got it.
reference. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any public comment this evening? Nope. Then, under the consent agenda, Commissioner Strike, you have some comments on one of the items.
Yeah, I just was want to comment on the consent agenda item C, as far as the rate. I think you should look at maybe on a round table as far as the area down there for parking on the hook. See if it even becomes revenue neutral from a safety standpoint. Look at that real close. It was a good catch on her behalf. Then also too, I think it's good that the staff has picked up that are end users at the event site are driving larger vans. And parking should be adjusted according to what our end users are driving nowadays and utilizing on the road. So I think that's a great catch. That's about all I have.
Let's add it to our roundtable discussion when we get to waterfront.
Sounds great.
Absolutely. My one comment that I had on mortgage rates, that is all what we asked Daryl to take care of last year. She's doing exactly what we asked her to do. The one change I would recommend that we make is not increasing boathouse rates over the next 4 years or whatever it is. I don't think that would be appropriate given the circumstances. So if you're consensus on that, if anybody's any comments on that, other than that, it looks good to me.
So do you want a consent agenda and then you want with changes?
Just with noted change, we can keep it in consent.
Changes of the boathouse rate not to be included.
Correct. I think it would be in our best interest, just from perception standpoint. It's not a great deal of money from. I don't think we need to do that.
Can I make a suggestion?
Of course you can.
Can we move the item D down to 7C and make it a line item by itself? And we'll do the changes. Is
Sure,
that all right with you guys?
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So you're moving item C?
Items D down to 7C.
Okay.
All right, so there's nothing else there. We get a motion to approve the consent agenda with the noted changes.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion. We approve the consent agenda with the noted changes. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I as well. Consent passes. We have a couple of presentations this evening. Where do you want to start, Kevin?
I believe, let's go with Mark Libby. Do you have documents with Patty to bring up, or is that just a handout? There is a handout. Do you want to just briefly describe the handout that's in front of you? Yes.
This one is, yeah, this is just some load information, table of the vehicles. Yeah, so that table has kind of what the vehicle descriptions are, what the weight, unrestricted, the current posted limit, and then the potential revised limit with one optional change there in the far right column. So, and that was just something I was noticing, just a difference. So that truck, a type 3S2, as far as then the AASHTO description and what WashDOT uses, is slightly smaller than what ODOT uses. So it's a 36-ton truck instead of 40 tons. the 40 tons is a legal truck though. And so I went back and I'm not sure exactly the implementation on that. Oregon's got a number of trucks they modified slightly to accommodate natural gas engines, and it adds 2,000 pounds to the front axle. I think that's included in this one, but this truck is also, and on the next page, on the back of the next page, you can see the schematics of the trucks, and that's sort of, and this is just not a picture, but just the wheel loads and spacing. So when we're talking about load effect, and then the signs underneath the table on that front page that's your current posted signs. And a couple of those show kind of a picture of the truck. Right, so that type 3 is just a box truck, so fixed, right? The type 3S2, the one we're talking about, is your typical semi tractor trailer. And then the other, this type 3.3 is one of those combo trailer rigs. So a couple more axles. So, and those are the primary ones. So I know your bridge pretty well. I don't know your traffic really, as far as what's, carried, but I assume there's a lot of the box trucks and the semi type trucks, right? I mean, that's what's just all over 84 and whatnot. So I was looking for a way, because, if when we're talking about should we fully restore the loads or not, it's kind of looking for a happy medium or potentially an argument that you could use for that reduction. And I sent John and Kevin some additional information this morning, because I've been looking at it a little bit, looking into verifying, the semi truck 40-ton limit that ODOT uses and what we're rating for is a legal truck and loads. I was trying to parse out, is there any reason why that truck wouldn't be operating over on the Washington side? It's a difference between a vehicle we're using for analysis and what's actually on the road. So that's why there's so many different vehicles that we try to analyze for. They all have a different effect. And so if you scroll down to the second page, what I try to describe to you here, and do you by chance have that laser pointer? Might help to show you. But what I predominantly look at is it's the concentration of loads. So like the grouping of the axles and then the length of the vehicle. And so the smaller truck, right? So you've got this rear axles and then a front load. Well, that's a pretty similar effect to the front end of this longer truck, right? So these two have a very similar result on short spans. So your concrete spans, your 40-foot spans, doesn't see all of this truck at one time. These axles are on a different span, right? So that there's that overall kind of a effect. And I went through and I was comparing the rating factors, and on the Oregon and Washington spans, these two trucks have a very similar result and the rating factors. And then on the truss spans, which are long span, 200 some foot spans, you can either scroll, just a little bit more. So then the next truck, which is a little bit longer and has more axles. These two trucks have a similar result on the truss spans themselves, on the long members. Now the stringers, the floor beams, they're similar between these two trucks because again, it's the heavier axles. So 217 kip wheel lines. Kip is 1,000 pound. Reference the K there. So, and then John, like for the grid deck, again, it would be for that almost the individual wheel loads that kind of drive that and that pound a joint. So reducing this truck doesn't really accomplish much because you're getting the same effect out of this truck and this other truck, depending on whether you're on a long or a short span. Now, I don't really know whether you have many of these type 3.3 truck. I would think probably not.
I wouldn't. think
Combo
so, just
trailers?
Because of the
Oh.
width of the bridge and trying to keep both of those straight going across.
I would-
I haven't seen hardly any of 3.3. I've seen a lot of 3S2.
Yeah. I would hate to be that driver.
I've seen very few.
Yeah. Yeah. So there may be some, benefit or effect there. Now, you're still gonna have the issue of it is limiting, and I don't know the fruit produce, whether they're typically the box truck or the tractor trailer.
They want to haul 40 ton if they can. They want to haul 40 ton.
Okay, yeah.
They're on 28 now. They want to haul 40. So that's,
And the loggers are fit more this middle truck with that back set of axles. And so they're probably up there as well. So you're still getting that overall effect. The other thing that I kind of wanted to mention to you in regard to this is that your bridge is safe to carry these loads. The load rating factors where we do have some of them that are close to 1. And again, the rating factor, the simple equation of it is it's the bridge capacity minus the dead load in the numerator divided by the live load. So it's remaining live load capacity, full capacity minus dead load divided by the applied live load. So if your capacity is greater than your demand load, you're above 1, right? So you want to be above 1. So the vast majority of your rating factors are well above 1. It's just there's few locations where that are controlling that are small. The other thing I'd mention is that dead load is increased by 25%. There's a load factor to account for discrepancies, variances, to make sure it's all covered. And the live load is increased by 25% impact, and then another 33% for live load factor. So that's the actual loads, whatever, are increased quite a bit there as well. And then the overall capacity is further reduced by some other factors, anywhere from 0.9, 0.95. A lot of the combinations result in 0.85. And so all of that sort of combined means really that rating factor of 1, if you stripped all that stuff out, would be something closer to 1.7 or so. So there's still quite a bit of reserve capacity. So it never is at the connotation that if rating factor is slightly below 1 and that truck goes over it, it breaks. No, it's more a factor of if you apply loads above that rated factor continually, it will degrade the bridge.
Help me understand something here, Mike.
Mark.
ODOT reduced the weight a year ago, whatever it was. Is it primarily because of the 2 on-ramps that caused them to degrade the bridge? What was the driving factor from ODOT to reduce the weight limit?
Well, let's see, and I didn't bring that with me. There were several. What was the controlling? I believe their controls were truss gusset plate joints. We had, in our analysis, we actually had the Oregon approach bands much worse than their analysis.
Where I'm coming from is I'm trying to big picture understand it. We beefed up, rebuilt the Oregon and Washington on-ramp, at least the decking of it. Okay, so,
Well,
okay,
we just put an overlay on there. We added dead load. We added weight to the bridge, which hurts you.
okay. So what have we done
On the,
that would allow ODOT to raise the limit back up?
we did instrumentation and a live load test to determine how the loads are actually being distributed to the members of the bridge through, and then modeled that through analysis. So in the ODOT approach, the load rating analysis would just be applying distribution factors. So we have these equations that we apply that says, you know, this wheel line's gonna distribute this much load to that girder and that to that girder. And you run those across. The live load testing, we instrument those beams, move a truck across it of known load and in several paths. And we document what that actual load effect is. And then they build that into the model to actually capture the real distribution effects.
So their model was ultra conservative?
Yeah, generally the distribution factors are more conservative.
And when we did the
That
live load,
actual-
we're taking some of that conservative out by replacing the values with actual values that you're seeing on the grid.
It's more of a refinement of how the loads are actually distributed through the bridge members.
So Mark, in order for ODOT to lower the rating, they didn't require a live load test?
No, to lower it?
Yeah.
No, they just analyze. So
Wow.
part of what they did was, this is a change in the analysis method. It's load and resistance factor rating is a new approach. So our design code now for the last, 10, 12 years has been a load and resistance factor design, which is a little different than our old design, which was either strength or allowable stress methods, right? So there's some changes in the codes there. And it was a whole lot of changes, but predominantly what it did was it was more of a calibrated design code to basically accommodate more uniformity across the different members. The old design codes you might have a safety factor of 8 or 10 in your bridge deck and 3 in your girders, something like that. The goal of this new code was to get this reliability index on the range of 3.5. It's not exactly a safety factor, but it's sort of targeting the elements of the bridge to be more uniformly designed instead of some pieces way over designed and others less. Years later, they finally caught up to the load rating being applied under the same time. So quick example, I guess, so the live load factor now on the design vehicle is 1.75. It used to be 2.17, which was a combination of a couple of 1.67 and then another factor applied to that. So it's actually lower now than it used to be with the live load factor. But there's other changes on the capacity side, resistance factors and other things that they don't really balance out. They're not the same. The goal was more of a consistent analysis across the various different types of structures and different members. So, I mean, it's a good approach and there's a lot of backing to that. But so your old load rating was based off of different analysis, basically different procedures. So they applied the LRFR approach and the results were lower rating factors.
So if we just play here for a minute, mental math, on a 3S2 type truck, which is the ones that we typically are going to see going across the bridge.
Yeah.
And you think the heaviest ones are probably going to be with fruit. So if it's a 30 36-foot trailer usable space. That's 9 bins. You go too high, that's 36 bins. Each bin on pairs, which is the heaviest one, is about 1,200 pounds. That gets you about 43,000 pounds or 22 tons. You gotta add the weight of the truck. What's a typical weight of an 3S2? Do you have an idea?
I know.
Okay, if we've got 9 times 2 times 2, that's 22 tons. And that rating right now says you can do 32 tons the way we've got it posted right now, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the way that they would have to adjust this, their typical load, they go 3 high. Which I haven't seen many trucks 3 high loaded with fruit, even the ones that go up to the Dalles and across. So I don't understand unless these trucks weigh a hell of a lot.
I asked every grower I could think of this week that does business with Underwood. What they are currently hauling, and that's why I never answered that question, what they would like to,
Yeah.
they're full. To fill up their trailers and their trucks, they would need it to be 40. Is what I was told by every single one of them. If they could haul 40, they want it to be 40. I didn't ask what the weight of the truck was or how many bins they're carrying, or if they're carrying pup trailers too. To get there. But
Well,
every
see-
single one of them said 40.
Pup trailers is different.
I know, but everybody just said 40.
I don't know.
And that fits there.
I don't know what the weight of the truck is. Yeah, I don't have a clue.
Yeah,
And that kind of fits with the criteria for the highways themselves, so that not just the bridges, but also the
now the other challenge we've got, we have no way of knowing on a 3S2 today. Other than fruit trucks, because we can count bins and do a mental calculation on it. The rest of the trucks, we have no idea what they're carrying.
Yeah.
We don't know what they're weighing going across. They could be at 40 tons right now and we wouldn't know.
Yeah, I know there's a way station just this side of Cascade Locks for traffic coming this way and.
Yeah, and of
you know,
course,
they're-
the reason why they're stopping there is they're coming from the Dalles, they're not coming across our bridge, so.
Yeah.
And then we have a unique situation where the fruit growers and the loggers don't really have scales.
They may not cross any.
They don't have to do that.
Well,
It's not
not even
our-
them, just normal freight.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Empty
Absolutely.
tractor trailer is 35,000 pounds. It's roughly 35,000 pounds.
So,
For an empty.
so is
That's-
the end result of this
their
analysis, is
total
we
weight
have the
is
ability to,
36
if we
tons,
choose
I
to
think.
raise it,
Well, I think
or
that's,
request it be raised, is that
And
where
makes
we're
kind
at?
of sense.
I think that's the question is that does, if we, because you have the supplemental report that is kind of pending. And the result of that could be the potential raising of the load.
yeah, so
And so
that
that's-
would be the next step. We haven't
So
submitted.
we have the right information to do that, should we choose, I guess the question is, why shouldn't we? That's my question, is why should we not do that?
So a question for you before we get there is, what are the steps that we have to go through if we say, yeah, we wanna see about raising the limit back up, either to 36 or to 40? What's the next step and how long is it gonna take?
So we would need to submit our supplemental load rating to ODOT for their review. And then give them some time to review it and determine if they have any comments that we would need to address. And, you know, not sure how depth they'll go into. There's sample calcs included, you know, that we prepared. That they may go through that. Not entirely sure. We do have to get the confirmation on those splice plates I told you about last time that were discovered, and we're gonna be doing that November 17th. So we'll verify they're actually there and measured. So we will have to supplement that. So what I propose is I could go ahead and submit a draft version to ODOT that we've already updated based on the presence of those plates. So they could review for comment we would follow up with a supplemental to add documentation that those plates are actually there and that field verified. So, but that's just buys us some time for them to start review and determine, do they have any questions or comments about it? If they accept it, now then we've basically shown that those legal trucks can be raised to these revised posted limits. So
I guess the real thing we need to know before we could make a decision like that, I mean, if it's just having them review it to see what they say, sure. Before we make a decision, I think we need to know, okay, the data says this is gonna work just fine, these trucks can go across this, but do we need to spend 200 grand now and 5 million in 5 years to make it happen? Or is it nothing needs to be done over the course of the next decade and the data says it should be fine? I mean, I don't want to see, well, you can do it, but you're gonna have a huge bill 5 years from now. Obviously want to support these industries, but if there's humongous cost involved, we have to think about that and know about that.
Would it help to do an analysis to see how many trucks are going across and what type?
Is that part of, I don't know if that's part of what we've done or.
They just said they.
no, we didn't
Yeah.
do any,
I think it's a fairly limited number of industries, I think. I just. It would be tough to support raising it without knowing potential for costs as well.
the primary potential, at least kind of what you're expecting, John, I believe, is that maybe the deck welding goes back up. Now, kind of only got 1 year, anecdotal evidence of that. And if you raise it and you're right back up there, then it's good confirmation.
I think that's the angle that has the most chance of causing costs we don't have right now. But
Yeah.
it's something we've been budgeting for years, because it was a good part of keeping that bridge going. And I believe it will be again.
But we do know that since the speed's been decreased and the loads have come down, that the maintenance welding has not been needed.
Almost not
What
needed,
did you spend on that every year 5 years ago?
50,000 a year.
So I guess that's what I'd want to know too. I mean, data says we can submit this, get it reviewed. What would be our ongoing costs? What would other potential costs be? I mean, we need to, and I guess. Are there different plates, different something that would have to be replaced 5 years down the road or stand a high likelihood of having to be replaced? I think I'd like to know about that before we make any decision.
If you knew kind of the number of and you might not have that from your revenue information.
Yeah.
Of what your payment, then you could also be looking at that from the standpoint of, well, your damage is caused by your heavy trucks, right? And that's why they pay the most in fee. And so is that another reason to
On a 3S2,
adjust the fee.
what did it show?
Well, I said a semi truck hooked up empty to a trailer weighs around 35,000 pounds.
That would do it.
Can I ask a question? What's the nexus between these load ratings going up or down and tied to the sufficiency rating? Are they two entirely different metrics that are not tied into one another?
Yeah, these won't affect the sufficiency rating at all. That's driven by only the HL 93 design truck, the inventory rating of that design load, not these other loads. And the sufficiency rating is disappearing. FHWA is coming out with a new inspection standard documentation, and the sufficiency rating is not part of it. So over the next, not sure how many years they're allowing it to be implemented. It's probably somewhere between 2 and 5 years. And then that will, I think, be no more. I assume this affects also the data that's submitted to the Federal Highway Administration. So now that's part of what all the states do. The states do the inspections, manage inspections, but there's certain data they have to submit to Federal Highways every year based on that.
So we confirmed 40, 36-foot trailer, 2 high, 2 wide. 17,000-pound truck, you're right there, 40. So that means they have to get it down, they have to remove a few bins to get it off the truck to get it down low enough.
Yep.
I've seen some of them going across.
So bad. But
So,
They're still.
I've also seen
they're
low
still-
boys with excavators, and I know way more than I do.
pretty much know if it's a log load right now that they're not supposed to be there, and we are seeing those for sure. Early mornings,
Yeah.
they're running the bridge pretty hard early in the mornings.
The
I'll tell you,
reduced
my big
speed is-
concern for this whole thing is that we've gotta make that bridge last another 7, 8 years. Could be even longer if we don't get funding out of Oregon. And I'm just real nervous with the degradation of that bridge. It's an old bridge. It's brittle. It's old.
It is old, but it's not degrading as quickly as this change in sufficiency rating might lead one to believe.
Well, I think part of that reason is that that rating was overstated for a number of years because they weren't taking into consideration the foundation.
Yeah.
So
There was
it's not that it's
some
fallen
of
down,
those-
it was bad several years ago.
But there's some of that, and I don't know, I did go through the calculation for that, kind of went through and I sent it to John and Kevin, and it's sort of, there's just a whole lot of those things that you get nothing, no points from, nor will you ever. You can't, because the narrow width, there are various things, there's just,
Right.
you're limited on your ability to ever, you could throw a lot of money at it and never get to 40. But what's more important is, so what? What does that really mean? It doesn't mean much. And that's why it's not being carried forward. It's an antiquated assessment of a whole combination of things to try to give a general assessment for the ability of a bridge to perform on the interstate highways forever. And that's why, the load aspect of it is a load that your bridge was well above a load your bridge was designed for, right? And so, nor a load that your bridge sees.
Chair, what I think is if we had a study that says over the next 8 years, if we raise the load limit back up, and it's primarily on this one set of trucks. What is the projection of additional maintenance we're gonna need? And is there a point where it's not just deck that we have to re-weld, it's some structural members there? If we had that value and we take this to ODOT and it's their responsibility to raise the limit on our bridge, our available limit on the bridge, it's up to us to decide whether we want to do it or not, I think. But then it would give me more confidence that, okay, ODOT's neck is out there with us. And we've got an understanding of what we think the maintenance is going to be, then we go ahead and take the vote on it.
That's exactly what I would like as well. So only way we can make an educated decision here, so. If you're looking for direction, I think that would be the next step.
Yeah, I guess my only other question would be the supplemental report. Is there like a timeline or a schedule as to when that has to be submitted by?
No, only perhaps within timeframes of what our contract was
Gotcha. So
set to expire or whatnot, but that's just a matter of changing the date and it's more about too of just talking it over with the ODOT guys, like, do you, as I probably would just give them a call and say, how do you want to proceed with this? Do you want to wait until we have this inspection confirmation, or want me to go ahead and submit the draft based on what your inspectors sent us the photos that provided that evidence, and review it to see if you got comments or questions. We'll update it when we do our field verification, and that just gives them some more time there. So then
I think there's two different things that we could both, I mean, they can move
Yeah.
forward with that, but also get it. And then we'll know what they say.
Yeah.
By that time, you'll have, plug in your 50 grand plus every year, plus whatever else you think. You can see coming down the road, and that would give us the two items that we need to have this discussion again.
The one last thing, and then I'll try and be quiet. I'm also concerned we're magically being able to raise the limit back up because of these plates that we found that we didn't know about. What don't you know that's still out there? That would take it the other way.
Well, I can't answer
Why didn't we know?
The
these
unknown
spike states have Been
unknowns.
there for years and years and years. Why did it take this long to find it? And is it by chance that we found these plates? How about the rest of the structure?
We
Is
did
there a
have other
deficit
limiting
hanging out there that we
factors,
don't know about?
including span one, which was one of the biggest limiting factors that we had at the time, which we in-house installed the lateral bracing. And that took one of the biggest obstacles out of the way right there. And then through
On
photos,
the
it was
Oregon span.
determined that there was an added plate at one of the gussets, or at the gussets that were specifically being talked about. So now, instead of having to come and beef those up, we can actually say that steel is there. Now, when was that seal always there? Who knows? Who knows at what time it may have been put on? That may have been day one. Just in order to fabricate and build it on site, that may have been something they did just to make that easier.
Yeah, those connections are riveted.
That's
So
right.
those were,
So it's
were
been there.
in there.
It's been there a while.
Probably.
Okay.
And it's similar to what's on some of the other trusses. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because, the plans are kind of limited, right? We've got the 1924 and then the 1937 plans when the other trusses were added. But back in that day, plans were very minimal. And a lot of it was by shop drawing. And so those may have been added in the shop drawing, which we don't have. All right.
You're not making me feel any more comfortable with.
Well, so you're not gonna have things put out there that were less than we're designed for. This is an added, so it's more now. We're gonna verify, the other joints on that span. Is the L2 and the L10 splice have them?
I don't want to come back here in a year from now and say, oops. There's another member out there that we didn't see that is actually in bad.
I can speak to that in a broad sense. Every other year, they put 8 to 9, 10 engineers on that bridge that crawl every inch of that bridge.
So why
And
didn't
to
they know
add-
this a couple of years ago, my friend?
Well, I think
Well,
it's
they
because
weren't
a lot of the
looking-
standards of how they assessed the bridge changed, which changed how what they were looking for out there. The AASHTO standards changed in that method of that calculation for each one of those joints changed. Wasn't that the bridge changed? It wasn't that they found something. It's that a calculation in how they assess it changed.
Well, for this, the plans don't show those splice plates
Yeah, that's right.
at these locations. So but the reason why is because they're not doing a plan verification inspection. They're inspecting the bridge for condition assessment. Is it?
Visual.
Yeah, it's a visual inspection is, is the condition good? So the fact that they added these splice plates was somewhere along the line, either the fabricator or the contractor said, hey, how come we don't have them at this location? Put them in there. And
Okay.
maybe there was no documentation of it. I can't really say. It was a surprise when we saw the photos and we're like, hey, the strengthening that we would like to do is already there. And so that was a good
So
thing.
Chair,
I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. I agree. I want to know both those. Any other thoughts?
Do you want to clarify the direction there for us?
I don't see why chatting with ODOT and starting to get their thoughts on the matter doesn't hold us to anything, so we might as well do that. see what they think. Also, I'd like to see, and I know you can't say it's going to be this in 5 years, but I'd like an estimate of costs that we know about. There will be welding, that's one. What else? Over the next decade? Estimate, I mean, I'm not gonna hold anybody to it, but okay, data says we can do it. We know there's gonna be costs involved. What are they?
So, so there's a track that goes forward if we keep the weights where they're at, and then there's a track going forward if the rates go up, the loads go up.
I think what Commissioner Fox is trying to say is if we know, you don't know anything, but if the data says that we can raise this back up and support some of these industries with a very low risk for cost and damage comparatively, we might support that. However, raising it back up when there's a high likelihood of large cost over the course of the next decade is a different discussion. Gotcha.
I could generally speak to that because the
You
only.
already have. I mean,
I mean, but just from the assessment of that load, your bridge was carrying those loads for a long time, right? And we weren't having regular frequent repairs on most things. Your deck is the most vulnerable. Your guardrail was the most vulnerable, but I think the speed reduction best addresses that.
Absolutely.
It also helps on the other things because you are reducing the impact load. We're still applying it in the load rating analysis, but your bridge isn't feeling it because of the reduced speed. So
I would
that's,
just offer to you, when you do this estimate for maintenance, I'd look at kind of a range. Okay, because it's not an exact science, right? Science, that if things really turn to heck, what is gonna happen to that bridge deck and supports to it? That's the upper limit. What's your guesstimate on your normal limit? And I'd like to see both of those as we go forward and you talk to ODOT. ODOT could come back and say, forget it, not doing it, or they're gonna take 18 months to do it.
yeah, and we need to get an idea of where they're at with it. And, you know, they have
I agree with
issues.
the Chair, we
with the approach.
need a little more information to make a reasonable decision.
Yeah, and we have to go through those steps before you can even get to that decision, right?
Okay, we'll move on it.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
thank you. All yours.
All right.
I got the city.
All yours.
Good evening, commissioners. In your packet is some information on the our quality treatment and stormwater outfall plan. This is that the city of Hood River is currently planning. This evening, we're graced by representatives from the city of Hood River, Ms. Abigail Elder, the city of Hood River manager. We have Mr. William Seaborn, city engineer. We have Ms. Jody Bear, ISM Solutions, and we have Rich Rice, the new director of public works. And I believe Ms. Abigail is gonna just give us a quick brief on what the plan is and what the possible ramifications are for port properties, and then just to give us an overall on the entirety of the project.
Great, thank you, Greg.
Absolutely.
Said I'm Abigail Elder. Today marks my 1-year anniversary with the city of Hood River, so I'm still very new. And haven't met a number of you, so I'm pleased to be in the same room with you. I have to admit, I do watch meetings on YouTube, so I know you, but you might not know me. So it's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you so much. My actual only role was to introduce everybody, which you just did. So thank you, Greg. It's great to meet you as well. The city and the port, of course, we overlap on so many projects. We have so many things that we do together and separately to serve residents. I just really want to thank you for all of the work that you do in the city and in the region. Tonight, we're here to talk about one of the kind of more invisible projects for our community, but are just really critical. This project, the waterfront stormwater project, encompasses 26 acres. So you can imagine this is a really big project, but within that project, there are many projects. And one of those many projects is, some water treatment pieces that actually impact or could affect port property. So we had an excellent meeting last week with Kevin and John, appreciated that time. And we wanted to summarize just the context of this project and give you some background information. We anticipate needing 1, possibly 2 easements. There's a little bit of information about that in your packet. as we move forward. So today, we just wanted to give you just the general, what is this project and what properties, might be impacted, and then to actually follow up with any particular action items in the future. So happy to answer any questions as we go along. And with that, I'll turn it over to our experts. Is that you, Jody?
Yeah, I think it's me.
All right, thank you so much.
I think I've been chosen. So I am part of the design team. Tetra Tech is fine, but I'm local company here, and I have ended up with a large part of this project because when we started, there was a different plan for the water quality treatment. And so I want to just start by going over the 3 phases of this project. And because everyone seems to have different understanding of the project. So it's a waterfront storm line replacement. So there's an existing storm line on the waterfront property along the blue, the red, and the green general route, but the existing line was pretty much all under on private property. And the red portion is phase 1, and it was replaced like a year and a half ago. And that was part of the Hood River Distillers property and sinkhole that happened. So that sinkhole was over the old storm line. It's very deep. My numbers aren't exact, but roughly 20 to 25 feet down. And that old vine was under the river, and it's a corrugated metal pipes. There's probably not much of that pipe actually there, but there is a route. So we're in the process, we as in the city is in the process of replacing that line. And the only way to get it high enough that it's not under the river when we put the new line in is to take that waterfront line also was the outfall, or is currently the outfall pipe for the big 26 acres in green there. That's the portion of the drainage basin that is the downtown portion. It goes underneath the railroad tracks and a whole bunch of culverts to an existing wetland that pulls up, and then it goes through more culverts under I-84 and gets into the waterfront line. So the original planning, which happened like 4 years ago, right after the Hood River Distillers sinkhole happened, determined that if we rerouted the 26 acres of runoff through the little green pipes or the little green dashes on the north side of just south of 84 there. So if we took it to the river in a different route, then we could build the pipe on the waterfront just for the waterfront area. So it could be built up higher and in the existing roads. But the trigger because the large 26 acres goes through a wetland, state DEQ, or not just DEQ, but a whole bunch of environmental permitting comes into place. And the current science and permitting requirements are to treat all of the stormwater runoff before we discharge that to not all of it with the water quality runoff, but it's the storms that carry all our pollution to the rivers and creeks and then rivers. We have to treat that now because we know it's creating lots of degradation basically everywhere for us. So the original solution that was proposed for treatment of the 26 acres in downtown was to do it north of the railroad tracks, between the railroad tracks and I-84. And as the other parts of the team that got into final design, it became obvious pretty quickly that it wasn't going to be possible to do that. Because we can't, as I was explaining to John, we would basically need helicopters to build it. And then we would have to do the same thing to maintain it. So what we are working on, and I've been working on pretty heavy since about April, is figuring out how to actually treat the 26 acres on the 26 acres. And we're actually using the most current, I guess I'll call it state of the art, but it's such a funny term because we're actually mimicking Mother Nature as best we can by building rain gardens. I call them rain gardens, but they're basically vegetated surface treatment facilities with soil and plants at the edges of our roadways. And so Columbia Street from 10th to 3rd, Wasco from essentially, 10th to 7th in Columbia where it comes back in, and industrial there are gonna have stormwater, these distributed stormwater facilities all through there. And we have also, we treat the roads, which have the majority of the pollution, but we also treat all the roofs. And industrial and the Columbia section in downtown, we have a lot of roofs, like full cell roofs. Tofurkey, the big city building. We've also got the Wakoma building in this area, so we've got a lot of roofs. Rooftop runoff that goes in downspouts and gets into the pipes. Before we can get to that water to bring it to the surface and treat it. So because of that, we've been working on how to get to that water and solutions. So part of the solutions for that is to access the water on the steep hillside at the north edge of that basin. And the Big 7 property, I've titled Hillside C, between Big 7 and the Union building down there. And all of you guys know where I'm speaking about, right? Okay, is one of our hillside facilities. And we're still working on the solutions. The other two are over by the Wakoma building. So all 4 of those locations that I've got identified currently are on private property. Pretty much all of the other treatments are on, in fact, all of them are either on public right of way or in the Columbia lot, on the edge of the Columbia lot, which is owned by the city. So, okay, so I've talked, that's the part of the project that I'm an expert on, so I've talked a lot about that. But there's 2 other pieces that are in phase 2. So I mentioned the red is phase 1, that's already done. Phase 2 is the green. And then phase 3 is the last piece, which will happen in the future. So right now we're working on phase 2.
So can I ask you a question with phase 2?
Yes.
In the big green area down there,
Yes.
it sounds like you got some like settlement basins. Is that
They're
capture basins?
actually like gardens.
Okay,
The best way for me to say it is they're like stepped bathtubs, because their streets are steep. They're like small ponds, like hardly ponds. They're really like soil basins that are flat with plants in them.
okay, so how do you pull the discharge out of that, and where are you gonna run it across I-84 over to the?
All in the existing culvert. So what our job is to treat what we call the water quality storm, which is all of the small storms that happen every year. Most of our storms, like it's roughly 90% of the water that falls happens in storms that are smaller than an inch of rain in 24 hours. So we're just picking up and funneling that, all those little storms that we get, like the one we're getting right now, through the vegetated facilities, and that actually treats the water. And then it'll either infiltrate if we have good areas for infiltration, or it will go through under drains into the existing pipes. So the existing pipes will carry
Okay.
all the water after it's treated, or the grounds will take that up.
Absorb it,
Yeah.
take it to the.
So under both the railroad and I-84, all the essentially existing culverts will continue to be used. Except for the area that we are rerouting from downtown and, so if you go back to that original green one, the
Do you have a pointer?
this thing. Okay, so this little bit right here and this little bit right here. I think, wait, this is a culvert, correct? Okay, and then, so we're rerouting in that. Between two between two wetland areas and then getting it to the river. Okay, so that's the work that's going on in here. All of this passes under the railroad in like 4 or 5 culverts. Okay, and then a lot of it goes to here, and so we're taking it this direction. And then to an existing small creek that flows year round.
So I-84 is not a concern of any kind of discharge coming off the asphalt?
No.
Okay.
No.
And
Or
so-
that's all with it, whatever portion of that, it's all been accounted for in the original calculations for the drainage basin, and I didn't actually do those, so, but it's
Okay.
not a concern.
And then the next step to that is all that port property down there, any discharge coming off of that? Do we have to treat it?
Oh, all of this?
Yeah,
So we're doing. Maybe Wade's gonna have to jump in for that one, but what we're doing a little bit of water quality treatment here, that's. So the new city standard is water quality treatment for stormwater runoff, so we're doing we have to do as part of phase 2, the outfall piece.
Hey, do you want to clarify that term?
What's that?
You want to clarify that term or what the city's requiring us to do with that intersection?
That intersection?
Yeah.
This is the trunk, this is the outfall section.
Right.
So that's the extension of the pipe that we already built
Correct.
to actually take it to the river.
So
So.
Commissioner
okay.
Fox had a question in regard to future development on the waterfront. Do we have to do anything special or add wetlands at all or to trap the
Not as part of what we're talking about right
well, I'm
now.
concerned, is there a phase 4?
yeah.
We don't know about yet.
Phase 4 for this project? Yeah,
Look at the port area.
you mean, you're
Some
talking about,
folks have businesses down there and we've got roofs and so on.
yeah,
Are you concerned about collecting water off the roofs and it doesn't meet requirements? We're gonna have to do something there.
so I don't know that, I don't think I can. Well, we have certain, okay, they're in the existing City of Hood River design standards. There are water quality treatment requirements depending on how much. How large the project is and how much new impervious area is involved, but right now there are water quality treatment standards for stormwater runoff in the city. Engineering standards, those types of standards. Countrywide and worldwide are being changed. And one of the state regulation for that is DEQ, Oregon DEQ. And that was, Abigail had a paragraph in the memo that's in this packet regarding that, and what's happening is as the cities get larger, we're all being required to do more of this type of treatment that we're doing in the 26 acres. So,
It's a county
Yeah.
function, is it correct? When I built down there, runoff roof. That was county sign off, that wasn't city at all. For some reason, that was county. Is that still true?
On the building,
On the building,
but it shouldn't have been on the.
not on the grounds, but on the building, my roof. That was county, not city. So how are you guys? If that's going into the same system, have they signed that off to you?
Your building permit was through the county, so they don't look at. Yeah, they don't look at stormwater, even stormwater,
They had to approve mine,
stormwater.
everything off the roof. They had to approve where it went and how it went. That was county.
Oh, Shepherd's down here.
Oh.
Okay. Isn't
And
it?
I was just curious, I had this project where the water goes off of, say someone else builds a building down there 5 years from now, is it still county? And I'm just curious what your guys' arrangement is
I'm not
with the
aware.
county as far as their,
County of yours.
We'll take a
yeah.
look.
I was just curious,
Yeah.
I'm just curious about
You
it.
know, this is kind of a new subject, but where it kind of comes into play is the lines that you're building out there. Do we need to think bigger and think about that area? If we're gonna have to do something with that whole area, would that change this project? Would you need to make it bigger? Would you need to have the culverts larger?
If we develop lot one, where's that water gonna go?
It's gonna go east.
It's gonna go a different direction.
Yeah, the pipe's too shallow by the time you get
Yeah.
to the lot one.
Or I guess, so their question is, would we be required to pre-treat on site?
On site, yeah.
And that has nothing to do with.
That's not a question for you, but it's, you brought up that
Right.
interesting idea when we think about developing more.
That's,
I
I just like bigger.
So the answer probably, yeah.
That is definitely coming, and it's probably coming to the city of the river very soon. Because that's how, and, yeah,
How do you plan on treating the rainwater off the roof of Big Seven? What are some of the options you're
so
looking
Big Seven, we have two roofs.
Okay.
That I cannot get to. That is the Big Seven building and the Wacoma building. And because of that, because I cannot get to them, they get into the pipe and go under the railroad without. Anyway, I couldn't find them. We looked up all of the old plans for all those buildings in downtown. And we have an agreement as part of our permit with DEQ to do. Someone came up with a good word for it, and I can't remember it right now, but sort of like an exchange or credit. We have to have rain gardens somewhere else to treat the Big Seven building. So it's like a credit for it. So we're over treating, and I'm not actually doing it, but it's happening around the Columbia lot. Where, anyway, I had to find locations to treat those. Sort of over treat. The Big Seven and the Wacoma buildings, because I couldn't get to that water, and for DEQ, we had to treat. All of the impervious surface in that 26 acres. So it's kind of an aside, it's a very interesting process that we're going through, because it's very expensive to come and do this afterwards. And in some places, I have too much water to be able to do it in a way it gets very expensive. When you have a lot of water that you have to treat in a small area you do it in.
So do you have alternatives technology wise, instead of using wetlands to be your filter? Is there a man-made vault? Does water?
Yeah, they're it's very expensive to install them, and it's also expensive to maintain them.
So there's filters that you have to pull out and replace.
No, well, we have, so
There's
there's-
some of that.
yeah, we do.
Okay.
So there's two, so the most desirable solution are these surface vegetated facilities. And they're only ponds, they kind of hold water for 24, 30 hours, very short amount of time. So they're not really ponds, they're really surface gardens that can hold water for a short amount of time.
Can you elaborate on that before you move on?
Oh, yeah.
Where are you thinking of building those or wanting to build those on port property? Anywhere?
So. Not exactly the rain gardens, but one of the vaults we're talking about. And I'll show you
Perfect.
that in a minute. There's a lot of information here,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to make sure. Now, what was I in the middle of answering to you, Kobe, that I didn't quite.
Well, just
get?
we're talking about far as instead of using acreage to be your filter. Like say, for instance, the Safeway development, to do that today. Where would you put that water?
Oh, well,
I mean, there's a lot of
I-
asphalt surface there, a lot of hard.
there is, so
Yeah.
so what we do is you have vegetated areas in between the asphalt. You guys have done some of this on Port property. You've been doing, some of the landscaped areas haven't been kept up quite as well, but. Yeah, you have to have vegetation, a certain amount of vegetation for all the asphalt. So there's more vegetation. But
So does
hopefully
that count as landscaping requirements too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. the second best solution, which is expensive, are these vaults that you're talking about of different sizes, and they use a proprietary medium in there that can treat a large amount of water and treat it very well. You can also vegetate these facilities. Then the next solution, which is we call mechanical treatment, are like the inlets that have the filters that you have to replace. And we do have to do some of that, and that is along the access road to the Big Seven. The access road just on the south side of the railroad tracks, where we have inlets, we have catch basins along there. I think there's 8 of them. And if we want to keep driving along there, the only solution I can come up with are these replacing the catch basins with these filtered catch basins.
So those catch basins are off on a city street.
Those catch basins are in, I think it's all private, right of way owned by the Wacoma building. There's one we talked about on the big, right in front of the Big Seven building. There's one on Union Building property. Anyway, there's 8 of them along there.
So I'd like to get to what you guys are asking for here,
Yes.
which is a couple reasons. So
So,
I'd like to
yeah.
know where they are on Port property or where they're
So,
proposed.
so there's 2 easements there's one that we most definitely will need to build the outfall, which is this piece along here. And that's the next slide. So this is, okay, this is Waterfront Park right here. Yeah. This is the outfall pipe. So this is Port Way right here. And this is the pipe you guys are gonna be building really soon. And then this is the outfall pipe along here. And there's the pipeline to the river. And there's a 20-foot permanent easement centered on that. I believe it's centered on the pipeline. And then there's a 50-foot temporary easement for construction across that whole property.
Where's that run?
It's
Exactly.
right next to the city park, and bear in mind, that is already a dedicated green space.
I thought there was already something.
That 50 feet, John, or the whole property.
That there's a 30 feet comes to mind, but I'm not positive
I
of
think it's
that.
50.
Yeah, is it 50? Okay.
So this doesn't impact future development ability at Maritime.
No, it does
And
not.
And
So
in fact,
there's already a pipe there. I
one of
mean,
the requests from the board was that the city install a footpath, a pedestrian footpath
sure.
from the sidewalk to the pathway along the waterfront.
So that one seems like it's gonna be a little more straightforward.
So Jody, if we were to
So-
develop the Maritime on the east side, where do we tie into?
So the Maritime is right here.
Right, so where would we
Right.
tie
I can speak
into?
to that because
Yeah.
that's the project you're gonna look at in a little while here.
Okay.
That's all the calculations for water runoff have already been done by Bell Design for that whole area. In collaboration with the city to determine the water for that whole lower area. So a pipe was sized, that will be stubbed out into the property.
Okay.
And the 2 catch basins will be replaced with filtered catch basins, which does what Jody is saying, that'll be pre-treated before it hits that line.
It's gonna be on the outside portion of the new vault being placed.
That's correct. And the thing there will be on-site treatment required in whatever development we do at Maritime. That's just part of any building right now. That's, bioswales and dealing with your groundwater, your stormwater is part of any development. But the pipe will be in place that once we've treated that water, that it's sized to whatever we would do. on
So the
that
catch
property.
basin filtering system, is it a lot of maintenance?
Somewhat, I would say, in that particular area, probably 3 cleanouts in the winter and 1 or 2 maybe in the summer. Not bad. It's about a 15-minute process.
It's replacing the filter media every so many years when you need to, so it's a long-term maintenance cost that needs to be evaluated as part of the solution. So this, right, and then, as Greg was saying, the little, I'm on the wrong side, the little cross hatching here, that's the 15-foot wide asphalt path that will be on top, right? It will also be used for, access for maintenance and stuff, and I think we've got bollards up, so it's for a pedestrian path. But then it connects with the path along the waterfront. So
I can't read your diagram. How deep is the pipe?
so each of these is 5 feet, so it's like 10
feet deep.
9 feet, 10 feet of cover, and it's a 36, it's a 36-inch concrete pipe, or a 36-inch pipe.
And John, that is the furthest east. That's correct.
This one
It's
seems,
not buildable, you can't build over it.
Yeah, and the other thing to consider is that this solves a really big problem with the maritime property and the building existing. Right now, that stormwater and the outfall goes underneath the maritime building. And it outfalls on the other side, but that whole outfall goes under the building, so agreeing to the easement and moving it down is a big benefit to
so
us.
we need to split these two up. This one seems fairly straightforward, I agree. And the project, you said we requested a path, which seems, I assume that the project also includes repairing of any green space damage and basically.
That would be part of it, and maintenance of that would be part of it long term.
Okay.
It would be the cities to maintain that space, that easement.
Okay. Are there any concerns with that particular request that anybody'd like to?
And running the pipe down through the center of the road, you guys cover all the costs as far as digging, excavating,
Yeah.
backfilling,
Yeah, that'll all be
redo asphalt.
Is
Yeah.
that involved?
for
on
all of
Greensboro,
this
our
work
property?
that you see here.
Involved here,
Yeah,
the new one.
yeah. And then there'll be a permanent easement for the city to be able to maintain the pipe. There should be very little maintenance required for that.
Do you have a schedule of duration and how long you think it's gonna take to turn up the road?
So,
Right on that
would,
road, right
yeah,
there. Oh, you cross.
Really not a lot. I mean, this phase in the road.
right.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
There's not really a lot of this phase that's in the road. North Aid, in the intersection with Portway. It's about all of phase 4 that's in the road.
What's your schedule, proposed schedule for construction?
We would like to do the outfall work this winter. If we can get all the permits and approvals in time. To get someone started. The fish window for this end is, I think it's November 15th to March 15th.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, that's the time of year I think we would prefer it be done anyway. We had to choose.
And I think they have to do the outfall to the Columbia during the fish window. We don't have, so we either,
We don't have a choice.
so we're
Yep.
trying to get it done this winter. But we have a lot to get together to make that happen.
Could you put the other diagram up that shows that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about the green line there.
We're talking about this piece right here. Yeah,
So from that point forward, you want to do it in, as you said, in the winter time. I'm concerned. When are you gonna do the section that comes right down through the road and connects to the red?
right in here.
Yep.
We don't have the contract document, the specs all written yet, but I don't think they would be doing that in the winter. They would probably finish that
Well, they
in the
can't pave
spring or
it.
summer.
But we want to get that
We
done
don't wanna
and
do
not
it
be
in
doing it
summer
in
either.
July.
Yeah, we don't want to be doing that in the middle of the tourist season.
Right,
Which seems obvious enough, you're probably not planning on that anyway.
We don't want that.
which is the same for the downtown work. So all the green will be part of one, we're intending that all to be part of one contract.
But it's not the same seasons.
Right,
Our same contract,
Yeah.
but the specs will be written to where you do the outfall section in the winter.
You'll do the outfall in the winter, then you'll tie into phase one as soon as you can in the spring.
Yeah, and work on
yeah.
the downtown and
Makes sense.
probably not allow construction at all, maybe between Memorial Day and Labor Day.
So do we as the board have any concerns about this particular request, that easement?
Staff is aware of this, and I just clarify that that's the only portion of this construction on port property is the easement section. That is all in city-owned street, so that jog from the manhole, that jogs over to the other manhole, that is in the city street, city right of way.
Eighth Street is the divider. We own from Eighth Street down on Portway, but.
Here.
And 30
but it
years
ends
from
right
now,
there.
And you'll hear about the follow-on project for us to connect existing catch basins, because correct me if I'm wrong, but the existing outfall underneath the maritime, you're gonna refill with ground or some sort of
Right.
medium that will be discontinuous. What we're connected to now, we have to come up with an alternative, which is to connect to the manhole that they're gonna set right before that jog makes a straight line with the outfall.
Right,
And you're gonna hear
right,
about
right.
that more later. We
Makes sense.
discuss it at length. but-
here's a question we need to ask. 30 years from now, this port has zero responsibility for any condition, any repair, any maintenance of that pipe, correct?
That is our road, so as long as.
I'm talking about outfall.
Well, no, as a utility easement, I think that that's something the city is gonna own, because that's why they have an easement on it, because it's their. It's their city.
That needs to be made clear in documentation for future.
That would be in the, that would be
In the
right
easement,
there. in
perfect.
the easement agreement.
Is there any reason for us to have excess conduits put in that portion from the river's edge back to Portway? That we, the port, may want to utilize
I don't think
power
so.
conduits, anything?
I don't think you actually can. I mean, I think the city engineer
Wait, what-
confirmed that. but
That's
we
what- and
connect.
And your other project, there are a couple step outs in those plans to serve that property.
That's correct.
Towards
And
Portway.
We can discuss that when we get to the report later.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information to. convey.
Okay.
But this
A lot of
section-
that'll be more clear when I explain the project to you.
So can we give staff a consensus on this particular easement that we're okay with them to move forward discussing it with the city?
Yeah. I-
You can go ahead with that particular easement, go right ahead and you guys discuss it and bring us in whatever your deal is. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one, this is what I call Hillside C. This location is just east of the Big Seven. So here is the quarter circle sidewalk that comes down. This is industrial here. And let's see, there's a line, a very strange property line boundary right here. And this is the port's property over here, and this is a strange parcel owned by Union Pacific to the east. And then the next parcel to the east is the Union Building owned by Pasquale and Jackie Brown. And what's happening down here on industrial is, some of you remember a long time ago, just when I had barely moved here or something, there was a complete rebuild of Industrial Avenue, and there used to be a deep hole there that was filled in with what we now have as industrial. But the storm pipe was built down in the deep hole. So the storm pipe from the Union Building, the trunk line storm pipe from the Union Building takes just, east of the Union Building, takes a deep dive and is like 20 to 25 feet down. And then it goes north to this, do I have it? Yeah, this manhole right here. So this is the storm line that you can see. There's a hillside above it, but the storm line is underneath the hillside. So it's been the trickiest part of the project to figure out how to get to that water. So what is shown here is half of the treatment for the roofs that I couldn't get to already. It's so I called Hillside C West. And this was the most obvious. I have it east that's on the Brown property. And it was the most obvious first solution. Because this property right here is owned by the Union Pacific Railroad. It could have been a potential location, but it takes several years to get property from the railroad to be able to do anything with. So we're trying to stay off the railroad property and require nothing from them so we can actually get the project built. So so what's shown here is a pipe scenario and a vault, and this is one of the, so it's a big concrete vault that you basically put in and fill with this proprietary medium. You plant the top, you plant it, so it also has, you know, aesthetically pleasing and does work, the plants do work for us too. This is the worst. Maybe I shouldn't use that, maybe I shouldn't say that, since I'm not done design yet, but this is what we think is the worst case scenario. As far as requiring the most amount of property as easement from the port. I have two other options that I'm going to be looking at. One, the first one, which I think is very viable, it's a little tricky. So we have a lot of utilities down here, but it's to take this vault and to move it, tuck it into this corner, which is up on the hillside. It would, I rework these pipes so they would come here to the vault. Then they would head this way. There would have to be a manhole here and another manhole here where we connect into the existing pipe. But it would be more workable in the, John was telling us, and Greg, about, we know that there's parking issues with the Big Seven, and there's a possible desire to use some of that, you know, expand the parking down there. So the next thing I'm going to be looking at is if we can tuck it in here, and then I have one other option that I need to do a bit more work with my model to figure out if I can take all the water over to the Brown property and have enough room to have a large enough vault to do all the treatment over there. And it's a possibility, so I'm gonna look at it. And in that case, we wouldn't need an easement from the port for any of the 26 acres. But I won't say that's likely right now, but it might be possible. So this, we don't have the answer here yet, but we wanted to present it to you because you only have a few meetings more before the end of December. I think we've got one more in November and one in December. And if we're going to be able to build the outfall this winter, we're going to need to have, if we need an easement from the port, we're going to need to have an answer. So we wanted you to be well informed so that as soon as we can provide the information and work with staff, that, you know, we can figure out if we can make this happen or not for this winter.
This one has to go with the other one.
No,
No.
no.
Yeah, so this could be a phase.
Oh, well, they both have to happen, yes,
Yeah,
but, yeah. We have all the permits are all tied together, both of them.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it kind of depends
But we're
on
not looking
when you
for-
get your analysis
Yeah.
done, what the other option is.
Yeah, this is just basically, let you know, we're looking at some things down here and
Yeah.
it's likely we're gonna request something, but it's possible we won't need anything.
I got two questions, I think. One's for staff. I'll ask you guys one first. These look like pretty flushed out designs. You want to start in 2 months? Why are we asking for easements this late in the process? Why weren't we asked for easements at 30%?
Well, we have had discussions on the one we know about with the staff, but
First time I've heard about Big Seven is 1 week ago.
Well,
No,
let me
I'm talking
clarify.
about the one down.
We have been approached by the city about a septic sewer pump station roughly in the same location. And then there were meetings that took place with Michael later on that brought in the discussion of stormwater treatment. So there really is two projects that they will eventually be looking more than likely for easements on the Big Seven property, one of them being for a sanitary pump station, and then one of them for the vault that we're discussing right now.
And the reason I'm asking that kind of leads into my second question. I would like to know from staff. What does this do to a port asset? What does this do to our potential future development of the site? Because if there's impact or potential impact, then I really don't like being asked at the last minute and told I need to decide something right now.
Oh, we don't want a decision.
Or you're not gonna get one tonight, but I mean, within the next, like,
But just
right away, I
decide,
mean.
what we're looking at, so we can come back with.
Right.
What has the least impact that we can.
Right, so what's, if this happens, what's the potential impact on the Big Seven property, future development options, all of it?
Staff is cognizant of that concern, and I think, as Jody explained, there's still some flexibility, it's still slightly fluid, and so depending on the ultimate, location, that will be, what will be analyzed as far as its impact. Because if they could show over to where she suggested a little more to the east, then it would have little to, it would still have an impact on a portion, but it would have significantly less impact. And so without having, that finalized, it's hard for staff to really answer that question.
Seems like something we'll need to know before you decide.
We sort of need to know the impact of the two. I know you're not at that point yet, but for us, that's one project. Regardless, that's just one project and one easement for us. One's for this, sanitary sewer and one's for the storm treatment. So between the two, it's a fairly sizable piece of property they're asking for, or will be asking for down the road. And it's still speculation in the one drawings because they're not there yet, but that was the first project that we were approached about, was the sanitary sewer,
Right.
not the storm. The storm kind of came to us a little bit as a surprise because meetings that took place didn't really get transferred down to us, unfortunately.
And where I'm coming from on this is, on one hand, obviously, I would want to, all things being equal, help the city out, help citizens out. That's what we need to do. On the other hand, I have a responsibility, fiscal one, to my constituents here. That sounds like something that would have a large potential financial cost to the port in value, in potential for the future. So that needs to be addressed as we move forward. And then, I would need answers there,
Yeah.
or at least some kind of analysis, I think.
And Commissioner, now that the commission has been briefed, dialogue will continue at a rapid rate, especially considering the work window. So this is the first step that it could have happened previously, but I think as things are moving for the city and things are starting to sharpen, staff is working with the city to figure out how best this is move things forward. So that information will come from staff as well, as far as what the finalized program and plan is. Not only so, but the
This could have a
perception of sanitary.
pretty big impact on our November, next week, planning session.
Yeah, I was just looking.
It could.
And just a little, this was sprung on us too by DEQ kind of way late in the game as well. So it was, when did they, I don't know, but it
Well,
was,
this area on industrial was the hardest part to actually even start to envision a possible solution. When the pipe is underneath the hillside to begin with. So it was the last part of the 26 acres. Like I had to get everything going. It's the last part that I even I started to come up with a solution and this was kind of a miracle that I came up with something that could work and could meet the DEQ permit because we can plant these. And so we couldn't have gotten, like, it would be all fine if we were a year advanced in design and we were talking about building next winter instead of this winter, but we couldn't have actually gotten to you much quicker than this. What could have happened is when I had the discussion with your former executive director, if that had been shared, then everybody would have been aware of this is a significant possibility in some realm back in June. So, and I didn't know. Anyway,
I can make clear how difficult that probably has been. I understand that. I just have to be looking at it
sure.
from this way also.
Yeah, the one benefit is that this solution, because we had to look at the entire 26 acres, is we're taking care of water quality treatment for the entire 26 acres with this project, unless you do additional impervious surface. So that's a big deal with the coming changes in requirements, you know, for water quality treatment for, you know, all our existing, you know, all our impervious area, and soon it will be existing and new. It's not gonna matter. It's already there. So that is a benefit that might be hard to see because, you know, kind of happening outside of the fort, but.
But what would determine the design route you take? Which design you take? The cost?
What's determining it?
Yeah, what will be the determining factor? You say, hey, we like A, and we're gonna need it either from the port. Is it based on the cost of the project, or is it based on?
It's gonna
Wow.
be more based on physics of the topography.
Okay.
the Gravity, can we get that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would imagine too, you don't have to work with the railroad.
Well, that means we don't have to wait for 4 or 5 years.
Exactly.
Maybe. I dealt with them.
Yeah,
They're nice the first 2 phone calls, and they don't know you.
Pasquale managed to. I think it's endurance. You gotta have tenacity. You know, endurance.
You have to live to a
They're
very
young,
old age.
Your grandkids are the project.
You're saying just to be able to deal with the existing 29
It's-
acres of impervious.
It's a fully, I mean, it's essentially a fully developed watershed. You know, so we're not designing, we're designing for the existing surfaces. And one thing that's important to understand about the treatment that we talk about, it's for a small storm. We're not trying to treat the February Pineapple Expresses we got, like, that's not possible, and it doesn't even make sense. So when water quality treatment is for the small storms, but you have to get to the water. So like you're building a new building, you put planters on the side of the building, and you size them large enough to treat that water, you're done. You can figure that out if you're thinking about that from the beginning. Afterwards, when the water is 20 feet down, it's a lot, you know, more challenging. So anyway, and it's all, it's viability. And if we can do this in one location and not 2, that just makes sense. So if I can make it work, this isn't gonna happen here. It's gonna be all on Pasquale's property because that location works from the other side. So it's just if I have enough room there or not.
Thank you for
Yeah.
chatting with us about this. I know more about this project in the last 30 minutes than I have in the last 5 years. So this is
Yeah.
very informative. Thank you.
Good.
So to staff on the first easement, yes. Go ahead. Second one, obviously, you guys have some conversations to have, and you'll let us know. Okay.
Information.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, Kevin, you have an executive.
Yeah,
report?
just very briefly, just a couple of items that are in that I wanted to touch base on that are not in the printed report. So I did want to make note on the legal services RFP. Thank you to Anna for putting together that RFP process. So we did receive 5 proposals for legal services. And after initial review, 3 have been invited for interviews. That date is going to be Tuesday, November 8th. And that'll be from 9 to 12. 2 of the firms are from the Gorge, or both of the firms that applied are being invited for the interviews. So I think it is kind of important to have a local presence here. So I think we've kind of talked a little bit about that. But anyway, Ben, I think you're available. I talked to Christy. I think she's kind of letting you take the lead on that as far as from the personnel committee.
Yep.
I don't know if you have anything to add, Anna, on that
We're
process.
Really lucky we got some great qualified candidates.
Yeah.
5 very interesting, great qualified candidates, and I think the interviews will be really interesting.
Hopefully, the goal here would be to have a report, and if
Maybe an obvious question, but I gotta ask it anyway. You've got some kind of evaluation criteria that you're thinking about.
correct, if there's and Anna's been preparing that, which includes all the questions you would. I don't want to get too specific because it's the questions you would expect, plus some specific
Case studies.
case study. I mean, we're gonna, the idea is going to be to challenge them with some specific things that we would like to see how they respond to. Yeah, and but also how they would respond. There's things that we've talked about in the past that we would like to see the way we would like things done in the relationship to be. So we're tailoring it to that because we've heard the commission, and has obviously heard the commission as her idea. So it should be fairly comprehensive and tailored to what we want.
Is cost part of your factor?
Yes.
So if we'll keep moving on that. And then the other item is the finance director position. So talk to Eric Jensen this afternoon. They received 5 applications for the finance director position. One is from the Mid-Columbia region. And a second one is from Oregon. The other 3 are from outside the area. Jensen will be conducting the initial interviews next week with recommendations for the next round to be received November 14th. And I'll just close by saying that remote working is continuing to come up during this application process. And so we'll see how that gets fleshed out through the interviews. So that's the status right now for the finance director position. Any questions on that item?
How are you gonna evaluate the, remote positioning? Some of these people want to.
Yeah, so part of that is I've got a little experience with it personally, and so I plan on applying some of my background to that. But this position will be managing direct reports, which
That's my concern.
yeah, exactly. So as we start getting into that evaluation process, that's where kind of the conversations and the back and forth become really important.
Ben, do you mind, Abigail, do you mind answering that, how the city would handle that, or how are you handling that?
How are we handling remote work?
Yeah,
Most of the city staff, of course, our main staff is public works, police and fire. Those are not jobs you can do remotely very often. So some of our planning staff work 1 day a week or, by some kind of pre-arrangement, depending on what their workload is. But we don't have anyone who's exclusively remote. I will say, as we do job offers, it also comes up quite a bit.
does it?
And that's your supervisors who you're talking about here, or
Exactly.
your,
So we have supervisors, we have one supervisor who works, no, 2 who work 1 day a week from elsewhere. In part because either they're on the phone all the time and they're loud, right? We have kind of an open space. Or I need them to be out of the building so someone else can sit in that desk for a day. Like, we're pretty short staffed. There's some benefits to the remote work. But it really depends on what's that person's workload. And really, it's 1 or 2 days a week at most.
my big concern here is that, we've talked, you're changing the approach to finance and what we want to do and how you collect data and how you present data. Having the person that's responsible for that basically managing that operation from the outside and popping in every so often. That makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
developing staff.
I agree. And I think that the development of staff is really the key one, I think, for long term. But I think that there's definitely going to be some project development as far as those reporting, so that you're getting monthly reports P&Ls, basically budgets versus actuals, those kinds of things. That's gonna take some time, and that alone time, if you will, is gonna be really important because these reporting, I mean, we were getting quotes of several $1,000s through Great Plains to have a third party develop these reports. One of the things I'll be looking for is I'd like this person to be able to have that ability. And it's not unusual for people to have that ability in this type of a position. So I think it is going to be a little bit of a conversation. And just trying to see, I mean, there's a big difference between 1 day a week versus 4 days a week.
I think that's a big difference.
So-
If it's 1 day a week, I would feel a little more comfortable with that. If it's 4 days a week gone, 1 day showing up.
What is staff think? The ones that will be interacting on a daily basis. or
Yeah.
Normally would interact on a daily basis.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And
That's-
I've talked with some of the key staff that would be reporting to this
Especially
position.
during turnovers.
Absolutely.
Extremely difficult.
And so I think that there's right now is, it's fine. I don't think that there's going to be, but that's the perception that, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
But there's also a large demand right now from those employees to get somebody here. So there's kind of this balancing between what's the market right now for these positions? How many more, this I think is our third round. So, are we going to wait and put staff behind the 8 ball as we're continuing to get into the budget season? So, so it's something that we're kind of going to be those interviews are going to be really important to find out what everybody's goals and objectives are.
And on this one, Commissioner Chapman and I asked Kevin to bring us a recommendation after he's had these discussions. So Jensen will chat with them. If they have something to recommend to Kevin, Kevin will chat with them. And only then will we listen to that recommendation and chat with them as well.
So if there's not any other questions or comments on that, the only other item I have for you, so the 2022 Special Districts Insurance Services Best Management Program renewal has been received. And as part of that, we do receive a 10% discount if certain things are met. And so I've been kind of just reviewing that. The one element that allows us to get the full 10% is board member training. Unfortunately, the annual SDAO conference was back in February. We only got a couple months before we're at the end of this year. At this point, I don't believe any of the board members have received any SDAO training or attended any conferences. So if that's true, then the remaining alternative is there's some online videos that you could review. If you can review that and just send me an email that you've reviewed the video, then I can compile that, submit that to SDAO to complete the 10% discount.
How many hours video is it?
I haven't opened up the video and seen what the time limit is, but
If I may interject, I did
Yeah.
the same thing for another organization.
Sure, right.
It's an hour.
Yeah,
It's an hour.
we did in the boardroom.
There's 2
before.
different.
Oh,
options
okay.
there.
Yeah, during one of the
Right.
meetings.
No,
You send me the link, I'll do it.
Okay.
It's an hour.
Yeah,
It's pretty minimal. Last time we did, we just did right here. In the
and
boardroom.
you've got there's 2 choices for you. So you can just pick one or the other.
Okay.
So you've got a little bit of choice there, but I think that if you can do that, and Anna helped me navigate some of the other elements in that best management survey. So I think we'll be good with the
Does
10%.
Sun River meet that qualifications for next year?
Yes, so that February conference that I think there was a note in the report. If you go to that, then that meets the training requirement. It was just this year, nobody from the commission went. So,
Can't play golf.
Ski.
Down there.
No, I'm going.
Kevin, you can send me the link too, and I'll take a course.
perfect. Thank you, Christy.
We all have to do it, right?
It's here.
Yeah,
So let's get us a link, so we'll all get it taken care
great.
of. And make sure we put the date we need to do it by in there, and we'll all get it taken care of.
You got it. So that's all I have for my report.
May I interject one?
Yeah,
last thing?
absolutely.
Your report mentions the negotiations with Northwest Pipeline, those were completed. It was recorded by Patty today, and that is.
Yeah.
Great.
Good job.
Well
Okay,
done. Thank you.
No reports this evening from us. We're gonna have 3 action items now. I'll let John start with the largest one. The other 2 will be fairly quick here.
Great, you guys, I'm gonna step up to the overhead picture here and show you. So the outfall project that they were discussing involves a manhole right here, and then the outfall goes out and comes to here. That means we need to pick up our street and the stormwater that comes off the street. We have if you look, we have a manhole roughly right there, right there and right there on opposing sides of the street. The new plan would be to install the kind of catch basins we're talking about that have their own filtration system. That would come all the way down to their manhole here. There's another stub right about here that comes into the maritime property, which is calculated to pick up this whole piece. So then there's a stub out on the end of this that comes out to catch this little sliver piece down here, just in case we ever want to do something with that. We have the means already in place. So we designed this so that we could install this entire system prior to them doing the outfall. And with 2 plugs, unplug one and plug the other, and we can switch the system over. Now, the advantage for us in getting there first is the connection. In this area is a huge amount of utilities, and our plans are held to a very specific elevation. Now, let's say they come in with their manhole here and somehow their 8th Street doesn't align with what we were thinking, or they are thinking at the time. And then we're not there yet. That could change our design. But if we bring the pipe down, connection of that into the manhole is theirs, we lose that cost. And we're guaranteed that if there is a problem, they'll work that out. So
Could we not tell them, here's the elevation that we're bringing that pipe into, and then they have to design to it?
that is what's taking place. And that was my whole impetus of being first on this project, was that through our plans, we are set and fixed in an elevation. If we get there first and that line's there, if there's a correction, that will be taken care of inside of their drop manhole.
Even if we don't get there, as long as we've got it designed to.
And we have an approved permit right now. So the plans have been
Let's be real clear on the project. This is our responsibility.
absolutely.
It's not optional, and it was put out to bid, and
That's correct. It
This
went out to bid. We received 4 bids ranging from 415,000 down to the accepted bid that we're looking at, which was 313,000. Engineer's estimate was 360. We did very well on this.
John, are we incorporating the potential of a hard perforated system or surface at the hook in this?
That will not be necessary at the hook because of how of what it is. There's never going to be a facility of any kind out there. That's not going to happen.
We ever save it?
That can never be paved, just like the spit can never be paved either.
Even if the runoff is engineered to, it goes back to the center of the road and.
You could use asphalt that, allow the penetration through, but even that would, in this particular situation, both the spit and the hook deal with that same thing. They really don't want asphalt on those, and that has been conveyed to us by the state water people, that will manage that. And
But wouldn't they rather have the water go into a treatment system?
well, I think it would be very difficult with the kind of treatment system we would have to look at out there would be what we're installing here, which is 2 catch basins that we will now have to get on a schedule within facilities to maintain on a specific schedule. It's not a huge undertaking, and compared to some of the other systems like they were explaining to you, this is the cheapest for us.
What was the top bid for
415.
415, and the selected bid was
313. And the engineer's estimate right in the middle. As far as a project manager goes, it couldn't fall any better than that.
I like that you've stubbed out for potential future development, even if it doesn't happen. That's smart. I don't think there's anywhere else we need to do that on that project.
No, and the stub out that comes into this property is designed to take all the water from that entire property.
Good.
So the whole plan that the city has, that whole overlay that they're talking about includes everything that's down here. So the question that you were asking earlier, what happens with all the storm water here, it already going into the system, right? There is a potential down the road with DEQ could require us to install vaults that do take care of that on site. Right now, that's not the case. Right now, we're connected to a system. That system is working fine. But as they were talking about, those things are coming. And this property will certainly, when developed, have to have its own water treatment. on
I assume
site.
that's now gonna be a city requirement on all developments is this kind of system.
Probably, and
And
the DEQ permit is the MS4 permit, which I guess triggered when the city reaches 10,000 in population, so that gives you a sense of.
And the reason I ask that.
Yeah.
When you decide to do something right here, there's $300 and something thousand. You own this street too. How much do you think that's gonna cost? Cause they've already told us everything has to go east out of there.
Mhm.
How much is that gonna
That's
cost?
part of the inquiry
Yeah.
project. But just to clarify, just because it's new construction when those requirements.
correct.
Are triggered.
That's
It's
correct.
Generally, and things may change drastically, but generally
Right.
the existing structure.
That's right.
about it. So
That's right.
if Maritime redevelops, if Jensen redevelops, or Lot 1 develops,
Yeah.
there would be a requirement to capture on-site, stormwater, water on-site.
I don't know how many were here, it's 3 years ago. Maybe 3 years ago now, the city, year before last, sorry, came down and brought that line down 8th Street. And when they got to here, we had to tie this building, this building, this building, this building, were all on one outfall right here. And we brought an emergency contract because unfortunately, again, we weren't given much notice of that. Basically, they said the line's here and you guys got to connect to it. But they were already there when they told us that we needed to connect to it. So we took it out as an emergency contract and got.
So John,
a
how are we
contract.
gonna address this, the future dog park location? Because part of that location's ours and the other part is the city's. Are they gonna address that under this development? Dog park.
This little piece
Yeah.
down here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that piece, we have a stub out. If we were ever to do that, that would be, we have a stub out in our new system that would.
Okay, so you stepped down.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All of our properties would be covered in this outfall. In this one stormwater project.
And so you're looking tonight for approval
Yeah.
to
okay.
move forward with that contract.
Yes, correct.
Anybody would like to make a motion that's in there? What page is that on?
91.
91.
Further, make a motion to approve the contract with James Dean Construction not to exceed 313061 for stormwater project.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I as well. Thank you, Christie. All right.
Thank you,
Go right ahead.
commissioners.
Thank you. Consent item D. Everybody's read, this is mortgage rates. We've already given Daryl the authority to move
You want-
forward.
Is it F moved down to B with an FB?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Let's do F first. Excuse me, F is first. Item F is B, timber incubator building. Had a couple of comments on that one.
The issue that I have with it is just a personal issue. I don't know about authorizing, processing and distribution of hemp. And yes, I understand it's not marijuana, but I just got a personal problem with that. If the rest of you are fine with it.
I'll step in because I was on my watch. We wrestled with that too, Mike. We thought about that too, and the perception and I have to say, we've had no feedback or no backlash that I'm aware of. John, have you heard anything?
There is an existing tenant in that same
Yeah.
building that
I haven't heard anything
processes.
on the streets or even in the boardroom here, so. But we had the same concerns.
And there's a lot of discussion I remember about potential for funding any kind of federal dollars that might not be looked on if it was marijuana itself or and not hemp. But that was a long discussion I remember as well. And
Our office prepared a legal memorandum regarding that, and I'm happy to forward it to Kevin to provide to you. I think it was, may have been before you came on, or it might have been at the time that Greg had presented that one of the other tenants wanted to change their operations to be marijuana. It might be useful to you.
I remember that was up in a building in Odell, if I remember. right.
Same place.
And we said on that one.
Right, it would, Yeah.
The request was declined.
so they are still there processing hemp, but not marijuana.
And Commissioner, I might add that these products aren't generally what you would assume would be for marijuana retail or recreation. We're talking about hemp seed, soap, health bars, talking about soap, we're talking about hair care products. I use a hemp-based product
Well,
in
that
my hair to
answers a
keep
lot of
all
my
these curls in line with myself. So these are very inert products that are being produced. And they are under the, I believe it's agriculture, or there's a different, instead of OLCC, which regulates retail marijuana, they have a different business license under. I'm drawing a blank. But
Department of Ag or something like that.
yes, and so that stipulates what they can produce and what they're allowed to.
So this is the same stuff that we've authorized up in Odell.
That's correct.
So since we pulled that out of consent. If everyone's okay with it or not okay with it, I need a motion to okay that.
I'll make a motion. To approve the lease with CG Operations LLC for 5,000 square feet of flex industrial space in unit 100 and 200. Located at 3875 Heron Drive, Odell.
All in favor?
Chapman will second.
Got it. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll be aye as well. Opposed? The motion will pass. It's important that everybody gets to speak their mind on this stuff. Now D, item number 3. D, I would like to recommend passing this with one change, which is no increase in rates for boathouses. I don't think that would be necessary or appropriate.
How long before their lease expires? Is it
For
4 years?
just over 4 years.
It's not much money.
It's not much money, and I think it would be a gesture, a good gesture.
Personally, yeah. There's Daryl's here. Ben, how do you want to word that? As far as, is it in?
I think you just make a motion to approve the item, it's not an action item now, so to approve the mortgage. It's the mortgage rules and regulations and marina mortgage lease rate schedule with the noted changes on boathouse. Something like that, okay?
And in regard to the changes, we have to specify changes as no rent increase.
Yes, I think that's probably.
I think if you word it like that would be just fine.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Chapman, I.
I as well. Okay. That one is passed as well. Thank you. No more action items. Commissioners, Commissioner Strike.
Yeah. Kim, I like the way you do your David Rickers printout. It's easy to read, detailed. I like it. And during the roundtable, maybe we could look at subleasing marina. Just put it on one of the bullet points. We need to just talk about maybe, is it practical for subleasing a slip for certain individuals for 4 months out of the year or whatever? Or is it just too much hassle for the staff to do that and to have one owner 12 months out of the year, even though your boat is not there? So we gotta cut overhead. So if you streamline it, but let's make it a bullet point for a roundtable.
We'll try to get out a proposed
There's
agenda
a
and schedule. To
option to
everything.
sublease your slips.
There is, we're trying to think about maybe not having that option if it's too labor intense for overhead. For
Oh,
the staff. And these new ones imposed it for 6 months, it's 4 months now.
Commissioner Fox?
next meeting, I'm going to bring a document to the meeting for your review, and it's associated with nomination process to the county for candidates for the Bi-State Bridge Authority, the new one, the new Bi-State Bridge Authority. We need one more week to get the Oregon side kind of together, and then we'd like to bring it for your guys' review and authorization from the port.
Commissioner Gary? Commissioner Chapman, anything?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, me too.
It doesn't sound like it.
Directives this evening outside of action items which have already been passed.
So I've been kind of keeping track, I think here. So there's the load restriction analysis that Mark Libby's going to conduct. We're going to start the negotiation.
More than that.
Okay.
It's not just Mark, it's us to take a look at cost impacts of potentially additional maintenance by raising the rate back up.
For O&M. Okay. Great, thank you. And then we can start with the Portway easement with the city. We're going to monitor the ongoing discussions with the Big 7 site. Amend the fees to remove the houseboat charges. And then add the subleasing of moorage to the goal setting.
There was also vehicle dimension and water. Yeah, it's in the roundtable discussion. And so these.
Got it. Does that sound right?
It does.
Cool. Thanks for covering me.
Okay.
Just maybe want to refresh everybody's memory. 15th, you want to speak about that real quick?
Uh,
Everybody, 11 o'clock.
Yeah, so in the executive director's report was kind of a brief summary, the 11 o'clock over at the Best Western. We'll have lunch there for everyone. And we'll have like a 15-minute kind of intro as far as like vision and long-term, you know, what's the port going to look like in your minds in the future? And then we'll break it down into 3 sets of basically business center area that we can kind of talk about and brainstorm. Then there will be about a 15-minute executive session to talk about the impacts from the legal review on the commission formation agreements related to the new bridge authority creation. And then after that, we would then go into hopefully a very brief business meeting to take into account any leases or contracts that may be forthcoming.
If I might just jump in, I think that if it's going to be executive session, is to be determined. At the end of our meeting yesterday, we discussed whether or not it would be better for that to be in open session, and I think it's going to depend upon our review of the revised.
Okay.
Tomorrow. I apologize, I should have.
Yeah, I had to leave a little bit early before you got to the end of that meeting. So, okay, that makes
So
sense.
it may or may not be executive session, but I presented to you all in the last meeting that I would have some kind of a legal memo at tonight's meeting, and that was determined that would be discussed at the 15th meeting instead by Kevin and Jerry.
Gotcha. Okay. So good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So does that sound about right?
Yeah, I'm not sure everybody's aware of it.
Yeah, we're developing some criteria. We should have we'll have that memo in advance, you know, we'll have some criteria that staff will be kind of running. After you have your list of ideas, we'll run the ideas through some criteria. I'll share that with you in the staff report, but really we don't want to provide you with too much to read. You know, we can reference documents and make those documents available to you either if you need it. But really I see our job is just letting you talk and we'll listen and then we'll do our analysis after the fact.
Well, I think also the staff will talk too.
Sure.
We need your
Absolutely.
input. We need to be a team effort here. Okay, thanks, Kim.
Thank you. Look forward to that. All right, with that, we can recess regular session and enter into executive session. Thank you, Abigail.
Thank you.
Enter into executive
meeting you.
session.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Easy. Thanks.
Happy
anniversary.
Thank you.
whatever.
Amazing. I'm so excited for things to start repeating. So I'll leave a couple of my business cards here. So, yeah, it's great when the second year.
I know how to.
But I'm glad not to be the newest administrator in the
I
area.
know, so I have to
Thank
pick
you,
up
Kevin.
the bar tab.
Abigail, our budget. Yeah, all right.
All right, we'll enter executive session under ORS 1926602E, real estate negotiations.